name is Tanner Colbert, and I will be going over the map that I designed for Fundamentals of Level Design for the Unreal Engine course on Coursera. Quickly, I just want to mention that I made this map as a multiplayer map for Call of Duty Black Ops 6. So, the design of the map and my intentions for the map all match, or at least relatively match, the core gameplay mechanics and features in Black Ops 6, or at least that's what I intended to accomplish with this multiplayer map. I don't have access to the Black Ops 6 game design document, so I couldn't perfectly encapsulate whatever goals the actual development team for Black Ops 6 had in mind when they made the game, but I tried to make a map that I think could potentially fit Black Ops 6. So, my main idea for this map specifically, uh, the core idea that I had was essentially a map surrounded by water. As you can see, represented by the blue tiles, this entire map is surrounded by water. And then this would be filled up almost to the top so that players could jump over the side of the map and swim and then jump back into the map wherever they please. But I'll get into that in a little bit. But Black Ops 6 has swimming mechanics in it, but when I was playing Black Ops 6 back when it came out, I noticed that a lot of the maps didn't really incorporate swimming in a very meaningful or impactful way, at least not in comparison to previous titles like Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4, where a lot of the maps were designed with water in mind and for players to actually use the swimming mechanics in a meaningful and impactful way within the game. So my goal was to try to create a map that actually had a larger emphasis on using the swimming mechanics. And then I also wanted to also incorporate kind of a multi-level map. As most Black Ops, oh, as most Call of Duty fans know, the pretty typical map design that they like to use is a three-lane map design where there's three main lanes of the map, and each lane has their own layout, buildings, and different interactions that you can have with the opposing team. I pretty much adopted that same mentality, as I'm sure you can probably see the three different lanes. But like I said, what makes this partially unique is that the whole map is surrounded by water. So this could be a lane, this could be a lane, that could be a lane, this over here could be a lane. But also, as I just mentioned, this is a multi-tiered map. So I didn't want to have just a basic three-lane map design and then call it good. If we actually, you can actually see there's a whole underground area of this map. So that was the core idea that I wanted to accomplish with this map, was to have an underground area and as well as incorporate water and make water an important mechanic for this map specifically. So now I'm going to quickly just run through the map and explain the map flow and kind of just explain my reasoning, or at least just go over the basic map flow, and then I'll explain my reasoning for designing the map the way I did in connection to the level design document that I made. So I'm starting here at the south spawn point. There's another spawn point on the other side of the map. That's the north spawn point. So I'll go over this entire top area first, the main above ground area, and then I'll go underneath and explain some of the mechanics there. But my main idea was I essentially wanted the player to be able to, at any point, jump into the water and use the water as flanking routes. So they could jump into the water, swim over there, and then hop back in and try to flank unsuspecting players. And then also use the water to go down into the secret underground area. But essentially, if you're playing capture the flag, this is where this team's flag would be. This is a little alcove area. I'll explain why I created this during my playtesting changes section of the video. And then right out of spawn, you've got the East Lounge building right here. And then you've got some cover here to attest people in the building, as well as people over here and across the way. This cover's also here for players that want to try to rush over here and hopefully give them enough cover so that if there's anyone up there, they'll be able to make it across. If you're playing domination, this is where the A flag will spawn, is behind this building. And then similarly, this little area, we've got this building is extended out so that people can come around the corner and quickly be able to take cover. We've got this cover here. You can use it to attack people there, attack people that are up on the roof, counter attack here, and then you can move over here to these blocks and kind of rotate around if there's anybody here. This is a spawn point. All of the cones are spawn points. So back over there on the bridge, that's the main spawn point for the team that would spawn over here. But if you're playing a game mode like Team Deathmatch or Kill Confirmed, where it would be ill-advised to only have one spawn point, this is another spawn point where a player could potentially spawn in. But as we rotate, we have a couple options here. We can either go in this building and go upstairs to get onto the roof, or we can loop back around here and start making our way kind of back to this spawn area, in which when we get to here, we can either uh, go over there to get inside this lounge building, or as you can see, there's a well there. You can actually jump down the well and go into the underground area, which I will show in a minute. Or you can stay underneath the library balconies and fight off enemies that are in the lounge building that are potentially on top of the roof or coming out of spawn, or people that are trying to get up into the building right here, people that are inside the library. Another spawn point here. I guess we'll talk about the lounge first before we get into the library. So essentially, the other team spawns over there. So if they run over here, we've got some cover here for people that are underneath the library balcony, that are coming out of spawn, that are across the way, people that are already in the building, or people that just want to hang out over here. We've got cover. Another spawn point. And then over here, the main idea for this building, this is like a lounge building. So this is the library. On the other side is another lounge building. So we got the west and the east lounge building. So essentially what the idea is with this building, it was hit by a missile strike. So the building is starting to collapse. Like that isn't a window. That's supposed to be just a broken hole in the side of the building. Same thing with that open area over there. And this is supposed to be debris that players could mantle up, climb up to be able to get in to the upper floor, where they can either shoot across the way into the second floor of the library or down below. They can also shoot people on the roof of that area. And then they can also check their flank, make sure nobody's coming around here. They can also come over here, take out people here on the roof or are trying to cross from spawn. So this building only has two ways to get in. This way, where you have to mantle up to actually get in. But there's also a secret underground, not underground way, but essentially there's supposed to be a hole here where the water would actually come up. So that players, let me just go ahead and show, so that if a player that spawns here decides to jump in the water and swim, they'll be able to actually get into the building underneath here. And so they'll be on the first floor, and then they can come up to the second floor as they please. Essentially, like I said, my idea for this building was it was hit with a missile strike. So a hole in the floor was created so that if somebody is swimming, they'll be able to swim up and under and come in to the first floor and then upstairs to take up the second floor balcony position. But and then from that building you can jump down to here, rotate around, um, and then yeah. So essentially that's this building. And then quickly I'll go back over here before we get into the library. We got some cover here for people coming out of spawn there. If there's people here, we can quickly get into cover here. This is where the C flag would be if you're playing domination. And then likewise, this is where the other team's flag would be. If you're playing capture the flag, this is their spawn point. Same exact thing. You can jump off into the water immediately. And then here, we've got a little bit of cover to take refuge from people on the outside the first floor or on the balcony area. A little bit more cover here. And then you can get inside this building. This is the West Lounge building. This one is perfectly intact. The missile strike didn't affect this building, so you can either get in through the main entrance this way, or there's another spawn point here, but you can jump into the water. This is supposed to be a little dock area that players can then climb up and enter through the back way. And then you've got stairs up to the second floor where you can counter people in the upstairs section of the library or even down below, even people that are crossing from that roof to the second floor balcony of the library. And then we come back over to this area that I already mentioned. And so you can either get onto the roof of this building either through that doorway or this doorway, which there is stairs. And then you can get up on the roof. And then you've got two planks. You can either go on that plank or this plank, but essentially this is just a quick way to get onto the second floor balcony. It's a pretty dangerous way because you're wide open from all around. You can get shot from people in that building, people in that building, people down here, even somebody that's on the, excuse me, that's on the balcony part right here. But I wanted to include a unique way to get into the library besides just going down on the main floor and using the stairs to get up here. So this is one way to get up on into the second floor of the library, but we'll quickly drop down and go inside the library on the first floor. I've got these pillars here to provide some cover to make it easier for people to get inside the library without getting shot from either building or from some other angles. So this is the first floor of the library. Inside here, you'll have the first bomb site for search and destroy, and then you'll have the B flag for domination and another spawn point. And then you can go upstairs either way. And then when you get upstairs, if you're playing capture the flag, but you're playing the one flag version, instead of the two flag version, this is where the flag would spawn. So then both teams would be racing to the second floor library to grab the flag and bring it back to their spawn to get a point. Another spawn point, and then you can get onto the balcony through here, and then you can counterattack people in that building or people that are trying to come up onto the balcony through the plank. Same thing with this area. You can try and get people from down there. You can counterattack people in there or counterattack people trying to get up via the plank. And now, finally, I'll show the underground area. So, as I mentioned, I wanted to include kind of a well in the middle of the road here kind of acts as like a quick escape route or quick flanking route if you decide to go to the underground area first and then climb up out of the well here. You are pretty exposed if you do that, but if they're not suspecting you, then it could potentially work out fine. And then, like I said, if you're taking fire from up there or up there or over there, you can quickly just drop down. You can drop down. There'll be a ladder here. They won't have to jump, but it takes you to the underground portion of of the map, in which here will be the second bomb site for Search and Destroy, the sewer bomb site. And then you've got spawn points in the four corners, a little bit of cover. I wanted this area to be more open because I didn't want this area to be where the bulk of the fighting would take place. The bulk of the fighting would take place on the first floor where we just were. I wanted this area to mainly act as just a way to sneak around and provide flanking routes. So the well, and then you can enter and exit through all of these four entrances. Um, so for example, this entrance slash exit, you come out of here, you're directly underneath the West Wing building. So you can swim up, get up onto the dock, and enter the building through the back. And if there's a player that's camping up on the second floor and they're not suspecting you to be coming from this way, this would be a good way to flank them to get out of that and to get them out of that power position. And then similarly, if you were to come this way, this entrance slash exit is directly underneath the north spawn. So again, you can use this as a flanking route to get up into the enemy spawn point and force the spawns to flip. And then that entrance slash exit is directly above the east lounge. So you can enter our exit there and then enter through the hole in the wall on the first floor that I showed earlier. And then that's the entrance slash exit for the south spawn where we started. So just to quickly show, you could immediately just jump down into the water and get into the underground area if you so wanted to. And then you can either flank into the east, the west, or the north, or you can climb up and get to the top section of the map again. And then I also quickly, so that was the map flow, general map flow, and how I wanted the map to be played or show potential ways the map could be played. But I also wanted to just quickly mention that for the blueprint for the first person character, I did a little bit of research and found out that just the base walking speed of the player in Black Ops 6, I believe, was about 6 meters per second, which is pretty much exactly the walking speed of the first person character that you play as when you demo the map. So I didn't affect the speed of the character at all. Now, you will be able to traverse this map quite a bit faster sprinting. I was just walking around at the base speed. So if you were playing Black Ops 6 and you decided to just walk around the whole map, that's how fast you would be able to move, is what I just demoed to you. But if you're sprinting, you'll be able to move around a lot quicker and get to certain parts of the map a lot faster. And so now I'm going to go over the level design document and kind of connect my main idea, or the main things that I wanted to accomplish via my map design. So I'll quickly just go ahead and just go over the requirements and goals and explain how I think my map design was able to accomplish these requirements and goals in my level design document. So the map must allow for player flow. The player must be allowed freedom to take multiple paths. I think I was able to do that pretty well with this map design. I showed many different ways that the player could take. For example, starting here at the spawn point, you can immediately go left here behind this building to the A flag, or you could run up the middle over here, take cover, and then go down into the well into the underground area, or you can immediately run into the building, get up top, and then get into the library that way. Similarly, you could jump into the water, swim around, and get inside the East Lounge and get up top here. If you're spawning on the other side of the map, again, you can jump in the water immediately, swim over to the dock, and get in here into the West Lounge. Uh, you can run immediately into the library through the first floor, if you so pleased. There's a lot of different flanking routes and just general maneuverability on the map that I think favors the high speed kind of action that Black Ops 6 is known for. And then the map must allow for multiple play styles. The design should be able to cater to players who like to run and gun, hold sections of the map down, sneak around, use alternative paths, and more. Kind of like what I just mentioned, there's a lot of ways that you can sneak around enemy players. Like I mentioned, if there's somebody in the second floor of this building and you spawn here, you can immediately go into the water and climb up into here, and you're in the first floor behind them. Now, they could obviously set up traps on these stairs, but I included two staircases here so that they would, if somebody is camping here, they would have to watch both staircases. Um, Similarly, someone could enter the underground area and then they have four different, well, technically five different ways that they can get out of the underground area and get back on top, and any which way can provide the player with a good way to flank around and attack unsuspecting enemies. But in terms of holding down sections, like I said, I wanted to make these buildings essentially the East Lounge, the West Lounge, and kind of the second floor of the library, like power positions. If somebody gets in these sections of these buildings, they'll be able to have a large range of view over a lot of the map, take out a lot of enemies from different angles, and so on. And so I think my map, I pretty much had these two major requirements in mind when I was making the map. I wanted to make a map that was very versatile and allowed players to take many different routes to complete their objectives and to also just engage with the enemies. All weapon types must be somewhat viable. I think I did relatively well with that. I can't really for certain say that I did that correctly because all we have is this little assault rifle. We don't have any other guns, and plus, I'm not actually truly play testing this map since I'm not having people play an actual multiplayer match on this map. But when I was designing this map, I did keep in mind some of the major sight lines I wanted players to engage in. And it is a slightly smaller map. I think the guns that would do the best on this type of map would be submachine guns and shotguns. But for example, in this area right here, this is a long line of sight from this spawn to that back wall over there. So an LMG or an assault rifle or even a sniper rifle could be used pretty well here. Similarly, if you're up on this roof area, you can have, this is a pretty decent long line of sight right here. So you can try to counter snipe or use an LMG and or assault rifle in somebody in the East Lounge. Similarly, another long line of sight from here to all the way over here. So while I do think submachine guns and shotguns would probably dominate this map, I did keep in mind to make a lot of more open areas with long lines of sight to promote different weapons to be used and just promote general weapon variety so that the map doesn't become too stale in terms of play styles and what weapons are best for the map. All equipment and field upgrades can be used effectively. Kind of the same thing. I can't truly say for certain I accomplished that goal, but I think for example, in Black Ops 6, you have certain field upgrades and equipment. One of them is the spy. So when you activate it, your name tag becomes green for the enemy players so that the enemy team thinks that you're a teammate when you're still an enemy. I think for a map like this with a lot of different flanking routes and different areas that you can go, that specific field upgrade could be used pretty well. Another field upgrade is a trophy system. I think a really good place that the trophy systems would be used would be like here on the B flag. When enemies are coming in, they might be throwing flashbangs or grenades in here to clear out the first floor to rush in and get the B flag. Similarly, up here on the second floor with the flag spawn, and even in these buildings, a lot of enemy players will probably be throwing grenades up into the windows to try to clear out any people that are camping up there. So if somebody is holding down this position, they can put a trophy system down and, you know, keep staying up in this building to hold a power position. And then like frags and flashbangs and smokes all could be used pretty effectively on this map, I think. Like I said, frags to clear out these upper parts, flashbangs to flash anybody that might be in these first floor buildings, even smoke grenades if you're trying to cross from here to here and there's somebody you're worried about getting attacked from uh, this angle, you can throw a smoke, provide yourself with some cover, and then you can cross a little bit easier into this section of the map. So I can't say for certain that this map would accomplish this goal, but I would like to think it does. The map should cater to all game types and have appropriate objective locations and spawn locations. Um, I think I did that pretty well. I made sure to include the locations of where objectives would be so that you can get an idea as to how the map would flow with these current objective locations. So I built this map with the game modes of team deathmatch, kill confirmed, domination, capture the flag, one flag, capture the flag, and search and destroy in mind. Um, so I wanted to make sure I included points that represent where these objectives would be. And I think all in all, most of the objective locations are in good spots. I did change some of the objective locations, more specifically the search and destroy bomb sites. So here and here, these used to be in different spots. I'll go and explain why I moved them when I talk about my playtesting results and what I changed based on those results. But all in all, I think I did a pretty good job of putting the objectives in relatively good spots that make sense for the map. For this map, the player must be able to use the swimming mechanics in an impactful way, whether it be through navigation or getting out the line of fire. I have explained a lot of that already. Underground area must be included to allow for a unique way for map navigation. Once again, I've also explained that in pretty good detail. And then my goal, so all of those were requirements. All of those were things that I wanted to like make sure I had in the map. This goal was something that would be nice to do, but it wasn't necessarily a requirement. Make the underground area as detailed as the above ground portion. The above ground area is where the main action will take place, so details for this area are more important than the underground optional path. So I did partially. Initially, I was just going to leave this area just completely open, but once I decided to move the bomb site to the underground area, I realized that I kind of needed to at least put a little bit of cover down here. It would be pretty hard to take a bomb site with no cover. I think realistically, I would need to add more cover to this section of the map to make going for this specific bomb site viable. Um, but in general, I just wanted to quickly throw down some cover in this underground area instead of just leaving it completely open. It definitely would need more cover than what I have. but I did decide to put a little bit extra than what I initially had. All right, so now I'm going to go over some of the results of my play tests and what I changed based off of those results and why I changed them. So I did some play testing of my own, and then I had 10 of my close friends and family play through the map, and then I used their data to also make some changes. So I'm gonna go over my changes real quick, just things I decided to change based off of my own play testing. Um, so the lights by the underwater entrances, when I was making the map, I initially didn't have any lights, as you can see in the before picture. Um, and that was a question I did ask my playtesters was, could you find the underground entrances easily? And all 10 of them said that they could. But the fact of the matter is that there's no water in this section. So with the water, the player's vision is going to be completely blue and possibly even murky. So it could be kind of hard to actually find these underground entrances. So I thought it would be a good idea to just start putting some lights around the entrances so that if a player does go underwater, they'll have an easier time seeing these entrances, especially a player that's playing the map for the first time and they don't know the layout. These lights will catch their eye, and then they'll go and investigate and then find the underground area. And so I added lights to each of the entrances down here to make it a little bit easier for the player to actually see the entrances for the underground area underwater. Um, Another change I did, the East Lounge used to have three entrances, but I limited it to two. So this lounge over here, you used to be able to get in this building through the main entrance. There used to be a door here that you could enter and then you're in the building, as well as this side entrance that I showed and the first floor secret entrance if you go underwater. And I blocked off the main entrance for a couple reasons. One of the reasons was I thought it would be too easy for players to get into that building. I wanted those east and west lounges to essentially act as power positions. So if a player gets up into one of those buildings, they'll be able to hold down a section of the map. And I feared that it would be a little too easy for players to get up into the east lounge and essentially just camp the entire game. So I decided to get rid of the easiest entrance, which would be the front door. Now, it's slightly debatable if that would be the easiest entrance since it is completely out in the open, and there's a lot of different angles you could get shot at if you were trying to enter the building that way. But I decided to get rid of the main entrance and just leave that side entrance where you have to mantle up to actually get in, and then the underground water entrance. Um, So that was the main reason, but another reason was I made the West Lounge building only have two entrances. So I wanted to kind of keep both buildings like relatively consistent. I didn't want to just copy and paste both buildings and have them be exactly the same, just to have the map be somewhat unique and have map variety. So, but I did want to have certain features be relatively the same. So I did want both buildings to only have two ways to get in. Entrances for both buildings kind of requires the player to put themselves in harm's way or like take really long ways to get into buildings, which would make getting into those positions a little bit harder. So that was another change I did by myself. As you can see before, the front door was completely open, and then after I blocked it off. I also added more spawn points. So all of those little cones that were spread around the map. Initially, I only had spawn points at the main spawns by these little bridges here. But, I realized, okay, I'm making a multiplayer map for Black Ops 6. Every multiplayer map in pretty much every Call of Duty, they have more than just the main spawns. They have lots of different spawns, so that way when a player dies and they spawn in, they won't just spawn in one location and the enemy team have potential to just spawn camp and just kill them out of spawn. Eventually, the game, however the algorithm is written, will realize, okay, this player can't get out of spawn, so maybe we spawn them over here. The entire enemy team is camping their spawn, so maybe we spawn them over here, or maybe even inside the library or inside these buildings or something, just to get them out of the line of sight of the enemy. So I ended up adding a lot more of these spawn locations. So I added two in these corners. I added one in the East Lounge, one, uh, actually two underneath the balconies of the library, one inside the first floor of the library, one inside the second floor of the library, one behind the West Lounge, so on the dock, and then inside the little buildings, these little buildings to get up onto the roof of this building, which connects to the library. And then I also went and changed the bomb site location. So I initially had the search and destroy bomb sites both uh, in the lounges. So I had one on the first floor of the East Lounge and one on the first floor of the West Lounge. And I then changed it so that one bomb site was on the first floor of the library and then the other bomb site was in the sewer. This was before I added cover down there. But the reason why I changed the bomb locations was because I realized that having the bomb locations in the east and west lounges, it really wouldn't make sense for the player to really use the underground portion of the map because it would be faster for the player to get into those buildings I just by either, running into them via the above ground area or using the water and swimming to the rear of the building where each building you can get inside via that way. There's really no reason to use the underground section of the map in the search and destroy game mode if the bomb sites were in those locations because the underground area it somewhat provides the players with good flanking routes to take, but like I said, it would be much quicker for the player to kind of just directly run to those buildings to get inside the bomb sites and plant the bomb, then jump in the water, swim into the underground section, loop around and go out of a different location, and then it's a lot of extra steps that they would need to take. And so I thought that the underground area would be underutilized, so I ended up moving it into the first floor of the library because I just thought that would be a good spot for a bomb site. And then I moved the second one directly underneath the same objective. So it's directly underneath the bomb site in the first floor library, but in the underground area. And then I added the cover to make this bomb site a little bit easier to take or defend. Um, so that way it would actually force the players to have to go into this underground area. Now, like I said, I did initially want to make this underground area as just kind of like a secondary part of the map that players could use for flanking or getting out of trouble. But I feel like the map potentially had the possibility or the underground area had the possibility of being very underutilized by the player. So for the search and destroy game mode, I wanted to make sure that the underground area does get used a bit more. Hence why I added the cover so that the underground area would be a little bit easier to get in and take control of. I would definitely need to add more cover, but I think for what I have right now, it's fine. So those were all the changes I made just by myself based off of my own play testing. And then these are some of the changes I made based off of the play testing results that I had my 10 friends and family do. So the first question so after I had them play through the map just by walking around and just exploring the map, I then asked them 7 questions that I thought would be good to ask because they kind of directly connect to my level design document and it like makes sure that I'm actually accomplishing those requirements that I put in my level design document. So question one, do you think the map flow and design is good? That was a 50-50 split. Half said yes, half said no. Um, the five testers that said no thought that certain areas of the map, especially early on, uh, especially above ground, and underground for that fact, but especially above ground, like this area was very bare. This area is pretty bare. This is very wide open, this entire lane right here. And so the map was pretty barren when I started making it, and then after the play testing, I decided to add a lot of extra cover to those more open areas, which you saw when I was demoing it. And then this is the underground area where I added some extra stuff. So that kind of I think helps a lot, especially with moving around the map and being able to actually weave in and out of cover and recuperate from people, from enemies shooting at you from different angles and whatnot. And so, question two, do you think spawn locations are fair? Um, so, when I had them playtest this, I had put all of the extra spawn locations, which I showed you previously, on the map to show them where they could potentially spawn. This was a bit of a 40-60 split. Only 40% said yes and 60 said no. So a lot of the testers said that the current spawn locations might not be optimized enough for the specific game modes. Um, and the biggest concern that a lot of the play testers had was initially uh, the main spawns on both of these little bridges were completely wide open, and it was especially bad on the east lounge because, as you know, as I've shown you, there's this gigantic hole here that could look directly into the spawn of the south spawn point. So somebody can come up here and just basically spawn camp directly into the spawn. So a lot of the playtesters thought that that was kind of an issue that needed to be dealt with. So I decided to add these little alcove areas to both sides of the spawn, so that way people would be able to spawn without getting immediately shot by somebody from the lounges or somebody just camping these little areas or something. It essentially just provides more cover for the player out of the main spawn. Um, so that was the main change that I made with that. And then I asked them, are the objective locations in good spots? Most of the people, most of the play testers said that they were. When I had them do the play test, I did initially have the bomb sites in the east and west lounges, and then I made the executive decision to move them to the spots I did. So I don't know how this data would have been skewed if I had them play it and those bomb sites were in the positions that they currently are. But all in all, most of the playtesters thought the objectives were in fine spots. I already kind of mentioned this. All the players were able to find the underground entrances pretty easily. I just went and added some lights to make it even easier to find it. And then I asked, could you easily get in and out of the buildings? So essentially, I wanted to make sure that the players were able to get in and out of the library and the two lounges pretty easily. And the only really main concern that I got from the playtesters was they thought that getting into the side entrance, so this entrance of the East Lounge, would be pretty difficult because players from this spawn could easily shoot the players that are trying to mantle up to get into the lounge. And so to kind of fix that. So this was before and then after I added that little L-shaped cover. So essentially, this cover is to help with players that are trying to get up into the lounge from this side. So that initial first mantle, once they get up, they have this cover that they can hide behind to give them some breathing room. But then as soon as they mantle up to the second step, they're in the third, they're then making themselves vulnerable to get shot. Because I wanted this area to be pretty difficult to get into the building. I didn't want it. I didn't want the players to be able to just waltz into this building, but I did think that it would be kind of difficult with just like how much this section sticks out. So I did add a little bit of cover for that first initial mantle, but then it would be up to this player to fight back to keep themselves alive long enough to actually get in to the lounge. And then I also asked them, do you think all the weapon types and play styles were catered well on this map? It was a 7-3 split for both 70 yes, 30 no. A lot of the concerns that I had from the play testers was due to the small map size, that SMGs and shotguns and then the run and gun kind of play style would dominate this map. But as I mentioned earlier, I did create this map with having longer lines of sight in mind and allowing the player to use weapons like assault rifles and LMGs and even sniper rifles relatively effectively, even due to the smaller size of this map. So I didn't make any major changes based off of this data because this data mostly kind of just reaffirmed that the map was relatively designed well enough to cater. Uh, Now, again, I won't really know that unless I actually make this map playable and I can actually host several multiplayer matches and actually have people fight each other using different play styles and weapons. Um, but as of right now, I have left the map in the final state that it is without making any changes via these two questions. All right, that was my map. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.